Hi there, and welcome to another live stream. Of course, we've got Richard with us. Hi, Richard.
Hello, Stephen. How are you doing, my man? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good. If I'm looking hot and flustered, I'm going to hand over to Richard in a second. We've got a thing called the Download Festival locally, and the traffic is an absolute nightmare. So I literally have just switched on the computer for my live at 5 with Richard. So I'm going to hand over to Richard very briefly to just use the facilities and freshen up a little bit, and I will be straight
You
back.
nip to the loo, and I'll do some.
Yeah.
I'll sit you talking to myself.
Brilliant.
No worries. So yes, another episode. Had an update this week from Stephen in regards to the 24-hour live that we have taking place on July the 9th. We've managed to acquire, in fact, we've filled almost every slot available. I believe there's only 2 slots left for the speakers. We've acquired the likes of Dr. Anthony Chaffee, Sean Baker recently. In fact, let's do a quick look on a post that we issued today with some of the other speakers. Yeah, we've got Dr. Anthony Chaffee. We have Dr. Robert Kiltz, Lisa Weidman, Sean Baker, Judy Chow, Richard Smith, number 1, obviously, Kevin Stock, Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, Sabrina Salt, Professor Bart Kay, Dr. David Unwin and Jen Unwin, Lily Kane, there's Jen Unwin, Robert Sykes, who I did an interview with recently, Dr. Rachel Brown, Sean Sakonovsky, Stephen himself, Coach Bronson, Casey Ruff, Phil Escott, Colt Milton, Serena Music, Jonathan Griffiths, Jennifer, and the list, Phil Taylor, obviously, yeah, so that's an important piece of information. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. I've been working with Phil the Power Taylor recently. So Phil approached me through the share chat, spot on. Arguably, well, in fact, he is undoubtedly the world's number 1 dart player in history. I think he did he win the world championship 16 or 18 times. But Phil has come on board as so you started to gravitate into keto initially, but we're predominating more toward carnivore currently, and he is making amazing progress. He is competing in Yeovil on the 24th and 25th of this month, and I will be there supporting. I'll also be there with a table, so if any of you guys are looking to attend, I'll be there to answer any nutrition questions. And who knows, maybe you'll be lucky enough to get a photo and maybe an autograph with Phil the Power Taylor. So yeah, if you guys can make it. So we just a quick rundown, Stephen. We've just gone through a list of the speakers currently lined up for the 24-hour live. Super excited for that. And obviously I dropped the bomb that obviously we already had Dr. Chaffee on board, but Sean Baker is now also on board. So yeah, one hell of a lineup. And you and me, obviously.
Yeah. And Judy Cho, Nutrition with Judy, very good. She agreed yesterday, so that was pretty interesting. I would have had a nice graphic for you to actually go through every guest. But I was going to say, we've got a couple of questions, Richard, if you want to field them as well. Do you want to do that? All right, let's get that. So we've got next week we'll have a much more on it live stream. I think our time has been taken up getting these guests on, so bear with us while we get into more of a swing. So yeah, is fluoride in toothpaste bad? Are there any healthy toothpastes that you can recommend? So we've only got an hour, Richard. What's your views on fluoride?
Yeah, so I've moved away from toothpaste. I think this is one we covered briefly last week as well, isn't it? Yeah, coconut oil and water is what I tend to use generally. Fluoride, and also in tap water. There are lots of nasties in there. There's another one that the name escapes me. Bottled water again is best, but it comes down. Bottled water is expensive, so you've got to live to your means as well. So I going slightly off piece here. I had a conversation with a client recently who said about processed meats. I can't afford quality meats. So there's two things to this. If you go to the butcher and buy in bulk, the butcher will give it to you cheaper. But the second thing is, processed meats, I believe, are going to be more beneficial than eating a standard lifestyle. So if you have to buy cheaper cuts and go for non-grass-fed, then that is a far healthier option than consuming normal foods. And again, we can take this over to water, isn't it? Bottled water is going to be best. But again, this depends how long it's left in the sunlight for, and these things are out of our control. So we can only work with the things that we have. But toothpaste, yeah, I dropped toothpaste a long time ago, and I still got pearly whites, I think. So yeah, nice pearly whites.
I have terrible teeth, actually, and that's down to the fact that I had a highly grain-based, high carbohydrate, low fat, low red meat diet when I was growing up, and my teeth are crowded. And I think that's one of the things that we know now, that the need for braces and things like that is just a modern phenomena, because when Weston A. Price went and looked all around the world at teeth, he was really surprised that it was only Western modern teeth that were congested and crowded up like this. And toothpaste really wasn't around for many of these cultures. I don't use toothpaste really. I use salt, actually, a salty paste type thing that you can buy, but I'm not a big fan of any of the toothpastes at all. I think just being as natural as possible. I've just managed to get up this list of people, by the way, to talk about the 24-hour live stream, if you're interested, Richard.
Yeah, fire away.
Yeah. So I better just say got it down here, so that's spoiling the picture. Yeah. So this is what we've been working on, and why our live streams aren't as dense, full of studies and technicalities at the moment, because we've been trying to get this off the ground. And I don't know if you know this, Richard, but we've almost run out of space now. We've had so many people say yes. And if we just go through who's actually coming, and the reason we put completely free is there is no catch to this. It's a 24-hour thing that we're doing. We're both going to stay up for 24 hours on the live stream, and we're going to get all these fantastic guests on, and you will be able to submit a question like you're doing now, but you'll be able to pick which guest you want to submit a question to, and we will ask that guest if they have time, of course, because it is getting very, very busy. So let's have a look at a few of the guests there. And more power to their elbow, because these people are giving up their time for free, in case people think there's something going on behind the scenes. I mean, Anthony Chafee is a very busy, successful person in the medical world. And I'm going to take my hat off to Richard as well, because Richard has, been talking to Anthony, and Anthony agreed to do the first 3 hours to kick us off and really get us into the live stream. So, I mean, I couldn't be more effusive about him, to be honest. And in fact, everybody you're now going to see who's going to be on, and there will be a timetable. It's not like we're going to hide things, so you have to keep watching and watching and watching. There'll be a timetable as well, and we want you to do the live stream if possible, because it's going to be excellent to get live answers to your questions, really. So Dr. Lisa, obviously people know. Dr. Robert Kiltz, I would imagine most people know Rob, who's interested in carnivore. You're not going to believe the guests. Lisa is fantastic and just unbelievable knowledge. I think 14 years of carnivore. We also have, like we say, the man himself, Sean Baker, agreed yesterday. It was only yesterday that he agreed, talking on one of his meetings. Not because of any other reason. He's incredibly busy. Judy Cho agreed yesterday. Obviously, we've got this guy, Richard Smith. Right there. Kevin Stock. So, yeah, I messaged Kevin, and within a minute, he just went, what an awesome idea. I'm going to book on. So we've had some people it's taken forever, like, digging for gold and really keeping going. And some people are they're straight on it. Dr. Sarah and Dr. Philip. Both of those are just fantastic people I've interviewed on my channel, really into the carnivore way of eating, really into, spreading really good news about what's going on. I'm going to get Richard to take over in a minute because there's a couple of people he knows more than me. Sabrina, Dr. Sabrina Salt, very good. She's an interesting person to talk to, not just about carnivore, but she's really into genetics and stem cell therapy. Then you've got Professor Bart Kay, who it's difficult to describe Bart. He's very shy, very keeps himself to himself, doesn't swear. He's just a little angel, really. But I don't think Richard knows Bart because that was supposed to make him smile a bit, my description of him. But anyway.
No, I do. Yeah, I was grinning to myself inside.
All
yeah.
right, okay.
Yeah.
And then, do you want to talk about Dr. Unwin?
Yeah, so we've got, I recently had the pleasure of interviewing Jen Unwin, who has been researching food addiction recently. That podcast is available. It sounds like a boring topic, but we go into the science, into the catecholinergic neurotransmitter synthesis, and why food addiction is a real thing. It's not recognized as an illness on the NHS, despite probably being one of the worst ones. So that's Jen's background. She works with her husband, Dr. David Unwin, who has made incredible progress over the last few years in reducing the cost of diabetes drugs by implementing low-carb ketogenic lifestyles. I can't remember the exact figure, but if we were to match that in every practice within the UK, I'm sure there was savings within the millions, if not higher. Millions upon millions, I think, Stephen, isn't it? We've got Robert Sykes.
Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
Robert Sykes, yes. Robert Sykes is the owner of Keto Savage and the Keto Brick in the States, another natural keto bodybuilder. Real nice guy. We also did a podcast with him recently. So down to earth, again, like Dr. Anthony Chaffee, such an incredible, nice guy. And then we have a gentleman called Stephen Thomas.
Hang on a minute. Let's talk about Lily. So Lily Kane is coming on. She's just a mega presence when it comes to carnivore, full of energy, lots of facts and figures, but also adds a bit of fun. So I wanted her on. I was lucky enough to get her on my channel. She interviewed me on hers, and just amazing energy and such a good person to talk about, because she's really grounded about how this way of eating is beneficial. So we got Rachel Brown. I don't want to talk about me. Rachel Brown, obviously psychiatrist up in Edinburgh, a late arrival to the cast of thousands that we've got coming on for the live stream. You know more about Sean than me, I think, Richard.
Yeah, so Sean Sakonovsky is an elite cyclist. He's carnivore, and he crushed his competition recently in an extreme endurance cycling event. Super nice guy. He's as crazy as a box of frogs, but that's exactly the way I am. So we got on really well. We also recorded a podcast recently, which I haven't released yet, but we'll have lots of fun with Sean. Who else do we have there?
Well, let's go on. Yeah. So Coach Bronson, very good. He was one of the people on the Reverse TV series. And Cammy, I'm sorry if your video quality is bad. It seems pretty good here, so it might be you, or it could be our bandwidth. I don't know. Anyway, Coach Bronson, he's coming on. Excellent with carnivore. Obviously interested in working out. Casey, the same. He is the he's the founder of Boundless Body podcast, and he's been a personal trainer since 2007. Started high carb and saw the light of day. So he's really interesting to talk about, because he kept meticulous data. And the gym he worked for, I don't want to give too much away, because obviously we'll talk about it in the 24 live stream, but he has got absolutely drilled down data to see the difference between high carb and carnivore. Phil Escott, he founded Carnivore and Beyond, which Facebook group, 17,000 people on there. So obviously a big influence about the carnivore community on Facebook, but also wrote a fantastic book about his own personal experience reversing arthritis. And he also runs the Big Fat Challenge with Ben Hunt. And that's a Facebook sort of challenge. And they do a lot of good work, give away a lot of free information. Colt Milton is quite new to the way of thinking about calories, for instance. He's now completely taken all of his training programs and doesn't do it on calories. He does it all on mass, as we talk about. I'm not a fan of calories. Serena Music is actually the force behind the Carnivore Revolution group, which is really good. And just very down to earth. She's healed a lot of her own issues and is very vocal in the carnivore community in a nice way. Jonathan Griffiths is the composition consultant, bodybuilder extraordinaire, very nice guy, very hardworking, gets himself out there, so that's good. Then we've got Delighted to Meet You, which is Jennifer. She's also a doctor of physical therapy, but really into carnivore, so that's good. The Superman thing over here, it should be a superwoman, because we've got Pim Jansen, who's Bart Kay's better half and also an expert in her own right about addiction. So she's a really good guest, and at the top of the program, Richard very kindly covered for me while he spoke about Phil the Power Taylor. And it says there, English, former professional darts player, widely considered the greatest darts player of all time, nicknamed the Power, and has recently started a low-carb journey. So that is the lineup, which I think is good. So that should fill 24 hours. And also, you can submit questions. And I wanted people just to see this. If you want to submit a question, you just click on Start there. And then you have your list of experts. And you can pick whoever you want to ask the question to. So if I wanted to ask, Coach Bronson something, I'd just select him. And then your next thing would just ask, what's your question? I mean, it's really simple. Why are you so strong? You could put, why carnivore? There you go. You can do a very global one like that. And you can clarify it there, which you don't need to do. And then we'd want your name. So I'm just going to show you how easy this is. And then email. So then my email would go in there. And believe it or not, some people just don't understand this stuff, how easy this is. zerocarbcoach@gmail.com. Now, why do you need that? Well, because we can then clarify your question, press submit, bang, and that's it. And then come the day, if you've asked a question and you can't even get to the live stream and you're watching it on a playback, your question could still be there. So that's everything there. So that's what Richard and I have been doing. And that's why today is not full of studies and science and things to talk about, but we will now catch up with your questions. So let's have a little look. And thank you.
I just noticed one there now with about the bromide. From Matthew. It's bromide. I know that it was used during the war, wasn't it, to lower testosterone in the soldiers. So obviously that's one that we want to avoid. And this is the reason that we tried to come away from all of these sorts of creams and potions and lotions. And this is why that I now only use, as you know, tallow-based creams and water or coconut water or coconut oil as toothpaste. But you scroll a little bit further down there, sir.
I'll put a question up there. Cami has asked, I wonder why raw dairy is considered so much better than pasteurized when we are okay with cooking all other foods that we eat. What's so different with dairy when heated?
Yeah, I don't know what the difference is between, when it comes to raw dairy, we're looking at A1 and A2. So typically carnivores are consuming A2 dairy over A1. A standard cow, if you like, is A1. Goat's milk is A2, and a specific breed of cattle is A2. And this causes less intestinal permeability because it has a lower casein level. But it does also cause intestinal permeability, which is something I think we covered last week, isn't it, with the Akikuyu and the Maasai. Even the Maasai, who were regarded as being considerably fitter, healthier, stronger, taller, better bone mineral density, bigger muscle mass, they lived longer. They were weaker in one aspect, and that was in intestinal permeability, and which led to autoimmune issue, specifically in regards to aches and pains in joints, and that came from the raw dairy that they were consuming in unpasteurized raw A2 type milk. So that's my take on the difference between A2. But yeah, I mean, I'm unsure, to be honest, why heating, would make a difference or wouldn't. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Well, it does destroy enzymes. So when you're heating, when you're pasteurizing, you do destroy some of the enzymes that are in the milk. And some people even assume, and I'm going to agree with them on personal experience, that because you're destroying some of the enzymes, that is partly what makes you intolerant to the lactose, because some of the enzymes that are going actually help with the processing. So I think I would actually agree with going for raw dairy, because I tried it personally, and that definitely was much, much better. I used to be lactose intolerant. I am certainly not now. And that what Richard just said about the A1, A2 is fascinating to me, because, for instance, goat cheese tends to be A2, but you can also get A2 milk products from cows. There are A2 cows, and there is an inflammatory response that Richard mentioned with the A1, which I think is interesting. But the A2 casein seems to be better tolerated. It seems to be easier to digest. There's a bioactive opioid in
Casomorphine.
A1 as well, isn't there, in the casein? There's just so many benefits to actually not pasteurizing. I am currently studying it at the moment to do a video, so I don't want to give too much away, because it will be a big video that I'm doing which talks about this very topic. So let's keep it vague like that, and then you'll have to come back next week.
I like it.
Right, let's have a look. The guests are phenomenal. Thank you, Sabrina, for saying that. Is there anyone else out there that wants to make a comment about the video quality? Because a bit worried that Cammy's saying the video quality is a bit poor. So I was just going to get you something up there. Oh yeah, no, we'll do that. That's actually part of my research. I was going to show you it, but no. Let's keep that.
Let's save that one.
Right. So major lineup. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's one I think that you'll like. This is from Joseph. Any opinion on cast iron cookware and potential excess iron consumption due to long-term use? That's a great question.
Yeah, I think cast iron is a better option than the standard saucepans. And it contains a compound called C8, not to be confused with C8MCT, and it's heavily linked to all sorts of cancers and tumors. Cast iron is what I use. I do change my cast iron every couple of years, but I've never been over concerned of excess use, to be honest. It just seems to be a case of that I'm changing because I've had the pan for X amount of time, but certainly cast iron is better than Teflon or any of these other non-stick pans that are coated with a C8. And that would be my preference moving forward for sure.
Yeah, I think the problem we're going to have here, Richard, is we're going to sound like an echo chamber, because I'm exactly the same. We want to keep away from Teflon. I mean, there's such a good film which is based on the true story and all the documents from DuPont where you've got forever chemicals in the environment now because of their lack of care and consideration for the human race and environment. I don't think I'm actually saying anything that's going to get me shut down from YouTube, because there's a great big Hollywood movie about it. About all
it is, and it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And not what they did, but it is worth watching.
Yeah, the film Dark Waters, I think it's called. But
I believe it is. Yeah.
It really does bang home just how the big companies and corporations have absolutely scant regard for health and actually due process and science. When there's profits around, it's really frightening. If you look at, I think it was, 1948 when Ansel Keys first thought that there was a link between cholesterol and heart disease. He didn't even know. They didn't even know in 1948 that there was LDL, HDL, VLDL, IDL. They didn't know any of that. so it was a pretty sketchy theory. And then when it was studied, I think in 1952, that that cholesterol was, eating cholesterol wasn't really causing the problem. I mean, he just went through hoops to make sure that it was saturated fat. And then you get into, I think in the 1960s, where the beginning of the Sugar Research Foundation, which was basically the sugar industry funding research to show that sugar was good and fat was bad. Everything that you look at when you talk about what's in the mainstream and the big corporations, just anyway, I'm not going to have a rant on a Sunday. I don't think that's very good. Yes, yeah. So the opinion on cast iron is pretty good, better than Teflon. So that's that. Right, let's have a look. Oh, this is a great question from Sunny, and it is sunny here, by the way, which is why I look like this. I've been out in the sun all day. We had a barbecue and then lots of traffic. So can you offer a few simple steps on reversing insulin resistance? Thanks.
Yes. Yeah. Look, there's insulin resistance. We can reverse this incredibly quickly. What we need to understand is that all carbohydrates break down to sugar. Sugar elicits an insulin response by the pancreas, and this over time leads to insulin resistance. When the pancreas releases insulin, it upregulates an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase, and it signals the body to store fat. And then we need another enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase to allow us to burn that fat. Now, the issue is when insulin is elevated, it blocks hormone-sensitive lipase. So not only does it send fat into the fat cell, but it prevents us from burning fat for fuel. Now, the more you consume carbohydrate or sugar, because all carbs is sugar, and that's an important fact to remember, the more we consume this, the more elevated or the longer the elevation of insulin occurs. So if I was to consume carbohydrate, my insulin would spike and it would come down shortly after, which is what I noticed during that the continuous blood glucose monitor that I wore recently, where if you become insulin resistant, it creates more of a mountain. Insulin is elevated and it sustains this elevation for a longer period of time. Now, when insulin is elevated, you are storing body fat, and we are leading to the fat cells growing, and then over time the fat cell will spill, in simple terms, and lead to oxidative stress and a whole other host of issues. So carbohydrates is key. So that's number one. Carbohydrates are found in lots of foods, but particularly grains is probably one of the most detrimental. It's not only high in carbs, but it also contains a carbohydrate binding protein called lectins. Lectins bind to insulin receptors and signal the body to store 5 times more fat than insulin does itself. So there's a massive impact on insulin resistance. And then seed oils, vegetable or seed oils, which don't come from vegetables, they come from seeds. They're treated with toxic chemicals like hexane and peroxide. And these they damage the liver and lead to insulin resistance. And these, fantastic slide. These seed oils, when they elicit this response, it's around 6% higher than carbohydrate even. Now, the issue is if you're not cooking in vegetable or seed oils, they are found in absolutely everything. So everything within the supermarket, every sauce, mayonnaise, every pack of Pringles, Doritos, crisps, Mr. Kipling cake, pasty, pie, whatever your health bar. If you look at the ingredients, it will say sunflower oil or vegetable oil or some form of seed oil, which is damaging your liver, leading to insulin resistance. So the 3 takeaways there are: actively reduce carbohydrate, understand that carbohydrates are sugar, reduce grains, if not remove them completely, and do the same with vegetable oils and seed oils. Start cooking in real fats, saturated fats that are hard at room temperature, things like butter, tallow, lard, ghee, or use the fat from the meats that you were cooking. You can add fat if you like, but it's not essential. I tend not to add an awful lot of fat anymore. Sometimes I do, but that's just personal preference. I tend to eat meat or foods as nature intended. So egg comes with fat, steak comes with fat, salmon comes with fat, chicken breast with the skin on comes with fat. And that's what I tend to do, but avoiding these grains, these seed oils, and actively reducing massively or greatly carbohydrate, which breaks down into sugar. You implement those steps and you will see a reduction in insulin resistance almost overnight. Quite literally, if you begin now, by tomorrow morning, your blood insulin levels, your serum blood insulin levels will begin to drop, and your blood glucose will soon follow. And I've worked with clients who have technically reversed their diabetes in as little as 2 weeks from following this protocol. And we're not talking about going, keto or carnivore. This is purely removing the grains, the seed oils, and actively eating more animal proteins while reducing carbohydrate. So yeah, nice and simple.
Of course. And I mean, it's brilliant. And your 2 week thing, I coached someone that got off metformin within 7 weeks. We're not guaranteeing that, but it's just saying these simple steps can make a big difference very quickly. I just like to add a couple of bits, because when you talk about insulin resistance, we're also talking about insulin sensitivity. And this is where a little bit of exercise can help. So you can do simple things. And this is a real suggestion. Before you eat, you could do 20 squats or do a little bit of movement just to get your body a bit more receptive to insulin. And certainly afterwards, this is one of the things that many people do: go for a walk after eating. That not only helps your stomach motility, but also you will see that your insulin sensitivity goes up. And when you're exercising in a bigger way, not after a meal necessarily, you have insulin receptors within the cell that translocate to the membrane to actually make the cell more receptive. So when you're talking about insulin resistant, it's best to sort of think about the food you're putting into your mouth, think about how you're getting your body to move around, because insulin isn't just about getting energy into the cells. It's a really important hormone. The other thing is, and I'm really sorry I interrupted your speech, was I wanted to just show something. And this is something I did when I was doing my phlebotomy. So I'm just going to start it up and just took you through it. Hang on 1 second. If I can just get to press start. There you go. Right. So when you're doing your bloods, your blood glucose might look really good. But if you don't know what's happening in the background with your insulin, well, it could be doing this. So this is over many years. Let me actually hide the comment from Sunny so you can see that. And this is why we're doing these live streams. So when we do the 24-hour, it's a little bit more professional. But yeah, so what happens here is you're measuring your blood glucose constantly, thinking it's in range. And in the background, you've got lots and lots of insulin going up and up and up. So if you were measuring your insulin back here using this example, 1986. Is it me making that?
No, it's not. I got noise in the back on my end. Apologies. I'll turn the mic off for 2 seconds now. Oh, we are.
Oh, right. Okay. that's okay. So so just here, what you can see is that if you were measuring year by year or blood glucose, and this light band is showing you that that's what we call normal. Maybe we could talk about that in a second. You would think, everything's hunky-dory. Look at my blood glucose. It's really normal. Well, if we'd been taking your insulin, we could have said to you, well, actually, you have high levels of insulin. So going back to the question from Sunny, this is the picture here, sort of 1998, of insulin resistance, because you're needing tons more insulin to get your blood glucose to be almost where it was in the middle of the normal range, and it's still going up. And then there's a tipping point where this just keeps going up and up and up. You can't produce enough insulin. That's the first thing. Secondly, you're becoming more and more insulin resistant. And this tends to be when people are diagnosed as type 2 diabetic, and type 1 obviously slightly different because they can't produce this much insulin. That's type 1. But in a nutshell, there is more to it than that. But type 2, it's basically about carbohydrate metabolism. That's or the lack of it. So that's just to illustrate that this is why it's good to do other bloods if you can. I'm not selling my services because I don't do bloods anymore, because it's just a bit of a nightmare. But I would like people to look at that and just think, well, yeah, maybe I should get my insulin measured as well. If you do go and get your bloods done, get your fasted glucose, your fasted insulin, and try and get your C-peptide, because the C-peptide is a really good proxy marker for the production of insulin. So you're going to have absolutely everything. And this will also then lead into the question about your HbA1c, because when you're a carnivore and you've been doing this maybe like 3-4 years, your red blood cells seem to last longer, and then you get a false reading on your HbA1c. It's much better to look at blood glucose, fasted insulin, and your C-peptide to see what's going on. So yeah, long answer. Sorry about that. That was a very long answer, but Richard, brilliant. Thank you for that. Next question. From Andrew. I'm currently eating 2 pounds of ground beef, 1 dozen eggs, 1 stick of butter, broke down in meals, and would like to get to 15% body fat. What do I need? Thanks. Now, can I just say something on that question? We're going to assume you want to get down to 15% body fat. All right. But don't forget, there's still people out there who do this because they're underweight and they've got eating disorders and actually need to gain weight. But I think from your question, we're just going to assume you want to get down to 15% body fat. So what do you reckon it needs to do, Richard?
Consume less fat. Nice and simple. So again, coming back to as nature intended, obviously an egg is protein and fat, beef, all of these are fantastic foods. If you want to achieve a goal, we've got to move the needle a little bit. So the body can process dietary fat, or it can utilize body fat. So if we want to utilize more of this, we need to reduce this. And it's not a case of starving, as many people would comment. This is literally flicking the switch from dietary fat into body fat. So when it comes to cutting for competition, for example, when I used to compete professionally, I would always consume adequate protein. So that would be at least 0.5 grams of protein per pound. So that's maintenance. 0.82 was minimum for growth. I would aim for at least 1 gram per pound generally. So protein would always be roughly the same, but the fat that I consumed would change. So I would reduce the amount of egg yolks that I was consuming, for example, over time. I'd stop cooking in butter. I'd use the meats from the fats from the meats that were cooking themselves. I'd take out things like double cream when I used to consume it, and cheese, and I would head to leaner cuts. So I would do typically 5 out of 7 days maybe on leaner cuts. Now, fat is still incredibly important. We can utilize stored body fat for the production of hormones, but I used to throw in a higher fat day, as in a fat refeed, sort of 1 to 2 times a week, where I would consume a little bit more fat, but only generally if I felt that I was flagging a little bit with energy, which typically didn't happen for me until I hit around 3 or 2% body fat. So I don't think it's going to be an issue for you. Getting down to that 15%, then it's a case of maintaining for a while, and then your body will adapt. And yeah, now my body fat sits around 8 to 9% comfortably, despite how, the volume of fat that I'm consuming. So my body has broken through this this floor, and it's found a new level, and it's comfortable at that level. But the body will always try to get back to a natural level of homeostasis. So your body's always going to fight to take you back to where it wants to be. But it's important to understand the difference between cravings and hunger. And to be hungry a little bit is okay. That's important to understand. It's okay to be a little bit hungry because we've got stored back body fat to use for fuel. But pure and simple, when I was 2% body fat, that wasn't healthy, but it was fit for purpose because I wanted to achieve a goal. I'm sitting comfortably now in single figures, and in order to achieve that. So today, for example, red in the face, I competed on a run. I did a half marathon today, my first half marathon race. I've run half marathons twice previously, but at zone 2 training type workouts. This was the first time I've raced at that. So I wanted to be the lightest that I could possibly be. So this week, I actively took out the majority of the yolks in my eggs. I went for leaner cuts of steak, and I threw in some chicken breasts. And I'm a big lover of red meat. I eat red meat every day. Chicken breast is processed through the body a lot quicker. Tuna and eggs are processed a lot quicker than red meat. So I went to the foods that weren't going to sit in my stomach for a long period of time, and the lower, fattier, leaner cuts. And that allowed me to drop another 2K this week in order to run today. And yeah, incredibly pleased with my run, which I did today with one of the guys I believe that's put a comment on there. So a shout out to James Curtis. Apologies if it isn't the one I'm thinking of. But I ran with James today on the marathon, half marathon. And I could see this is one of the questions that he's asking, obviously, is what does carnivore actually do for you? compared to carbs in terms of athletic performance. And maybe that's one we can touch base on a little bit later. But the long and the short is reduce dietary fat to ramp up body fat. It's as simple as that.
Brilliant. Yes. And I'm going to echo that. Just cut down on the fats, because you don't have to add a stick of butter. You do not have to add a stick of butter. Now, can I go off piste a little bit, Richard? Because this is where sometimes the net benefit is it health or is it weight loss? And I was actually talking about this yesterday with Sean Baker, strangely enough. And what's great about carnivore is the health benefits. And I always say, he doesn't like me saying this thing, but the weight loss is sort of like a side effect. But I do genuinely believe that the health benefits are the things to get sorted first. So if you have come from a low-fat, calorie-restricted diet and your thyroid is shot to pieces, I wouldn't worry about body composition. I'd worry about my thyroid. So if your body fat is, let's say it's 19%, we'll use as an example. Obviously, this isn't a live to and throw, but let's make that assumption. And you've still got some healing to do, but you've noticed some healing. It might be because you've needed that fat. So if you're in perfect health, then look at your body composition. Now, Richard might not like me saying that, but I do think we need to point that out, that sometimes your body has been crying out for these essential fats. And
for sure.
Your health tops everything. So your health, then how you look. And I promise you, when your health is sorted, big tick, I tell you, you'll look good. I mean, it will happen. We've done too many coaching calls with clients where that has been the case. Right. So now then, interesting question. I am going to show it, but you can pass on it, Richard. I don't mind. I don't know if you've got any knowledge or what we're talking about.
I don't. So this is, I know the hum phenomenon is perfect. So this is something to do with the environment and the world, isn't it? But it's not something I've ever researched. So I'll leave you hit this one home. Fire away.
I'm interested in this because of my hearing. There are people that report that they can hear rumbling, they can hear a droning noise, they can hear this sort of low frequency hum around the world, and they're a bit concerned about it. Now, I only know about this because my tinnitus, or tinnitus for the people in the States, went, which he isn't supposed to, and the carnivore actually fixed it. So I could have said to you 5 years ago, well, I've got this constant noise in my head, so maybe there is such a thing. But I do believe people can hear this. So I don't know whether it's something to do with their ears or whether there is a real thing. So that's a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of commentary, but it's not really what we're here for. But because we live in the real world, and both of us, myself and Richard, don't want to put words into his mouth, are more interested in the whole world than we talk about. Our niche is talking about carnivore, low carb, keto, those sort of things. But we're definitely interested in the environment and epigenetics and all that sort of stuff. So, thank you, Joseph, for talking about that. And if you want to bring some more information about that, then feel free to email me.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it comes to what we do, it goes outside the scope of just nutrition, isn't it? Because you become a biohacker then, isn't it? You begin to look into all aspects of health and well-being. I'm always keen to learn new things. So yeah, if there is anyone out there that knows more about that can pass that on, I'm more than happy to look into that. That's a fantastic question.
Right. So Joseph, I have suffered near debilitating insomnia for 8 years. Hoping carnivore diet delays insomnia-induced dementia. So just on sleep quality, I would say, insomnia, let's just look at the basics. Sleep quality on carnivore does tend to improve considerably. So I should have muted Richard then.
That's my little girl running back and forth. Apologies.
So you need to be looking at the fact that, yes, your sleep quality is likely to improve. But what do you think about this?
Yeah, for sure. And for a number of reasons. A lot of these foods that we consume contain lots of nasties and toxins. Grains, we know, seed oils, a lot of fruit and vegetables contain plant toxins, phytoalexins. All of these affect our body's ability to absorb nutrients. They affect the way we process neurons in the brain, as we mentioned earlier, through the catecholaminergic neurotransmitter synthesis. When we consume certain foods, plants, for example, so taking it back to the carnivore thing, there are anti-nutrients within plants to prevent absorption of essential nutrients like zinc, iron, and magnesium. And B12. These are essential for the production of the catecholamines and the indolamines, which is things like serotonin, dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and all of these affect the neurotransmitter signals in the brain. So we could, in theory, consume a highly nutrient-dense meal in regards to a piece of steak, which contains every nutrient that we need, not to survive, but thrive. But if we are consuming it with a food that contains anti-nutrients, i.e. lots of veg or pasta or bread, for example, the absorption of things like zinc, iron, magnesium, and B12 can be blocked by as much as 100%, meaning even though you're consuming those nutrients are not being absorbed, and they are therefore no longer able to be processed through neurotransmitter signaling. All of this plays havoc with the brain. The second you begin to remove these plant toxins, these phytoalexins, the brain begins to function a lot better. And the beauty, which leads into the question that James has put on there in regards to athletic performance, because the reason that you become more healthy when you gravitate into a carnivore lifestyle is because you're removing the antitoxins, you're removing the things that are causing issues in the body, you're removing the things that are causing insulin resistance, oxidation, leads to glycation end products, neuroinflammation, inflammation throughout the body. It leads to a bad cholesterol profile, which is something we can speak about in the future. But our body's ability to heal and repair, if we are consuming the wrong types of foods, our bodies can no longer absorb the nutrients within that meal. So going carnivore has worked wonders with my sleep. I used to suffer severely with insomnia. And strangely enough, I had 3 hours sleep last night. But I promise you, this isn't to do with this lifestyle. I was running today, and my mind was working overtime. I'm a bit of an idiot in that way, running through this course in my head. So I was unable to sleep. But generally, I sleep incredibly well now, and I used to suffer severely with insomnia, so much so to the point I would need to drink copious amounts of alcohol in order to fall asleep. But yeah, it's the way that it affects the absorption of nutrients and affects the catecholamines and the indolamines, neurotransmitters within the brain. So you're going to see a massive improvement. And all of these contribute to things like dementia, which is what we went into depth in with Jen Unwin recently. How these foods lead to insulin resistance in the brain. The brain can literally be swimming in a sea of glucose, but the insulin is unable, or the insulin receptors in the brain become saturated with insulin that they no longer pass through. And there are certain transporters in the brain, GLUT1 and 3, which are non-glucose dependent, meaning that we, or non-insulin dependent, which means that they can use glucose without insulin. But GLUT4, I believe, is insulin dependent. And this is on the hippocampus in the brain and various other parts in the brain. So when we are unable to supply this insulin to the brain doesn't function the way that it should. So in effect becomes insulin resistant. How is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think one of the things that we ought to just ram home is insulin isn't a baddie. It's the inappropriate level of insulin or the inappropriate sensitivity. We need insulin. And one of the things I often say is sometimes when you're going to sleep, people use a little bit of carbohydrate and it helps them. Well, actually, it isn't the carbohydrate. It's actually the insulin. So some people in a very low insulin state or with very high levels of insulin resistance coming from different ends of the scale there, it isn't carbs that you need. Actually, it's to improve your insulin sensitivity or your insulin levels. So I think that's, sleep is an interesting thing. I studied it as part of my physiology and health sciences degree, and I got really interested in the fact that there's remarkable difference between being awake and being asleep, and it can be a gateway of about 60 seconds when you actually start to be officially asleep, and everything goes down. Your brain activity, your temperature, your heart rate, everything absolutely goes down for 3 of the stages out of 4. And you can say to yourself, I didn't get to sleep because my mind was racing, and you are keeping yourself up a little bit. So this is where getting rid of devices and exposing yourself to the mobile phone, or watching a frightening movie, or having a terrible amount of lighting on all the time, just trying to get back to nature can help. And I know it sounds to some people a bit woo woo and a bit, I don't really need to do that, but it's effective. But look at the other way. Are you going to have a good night's sleep? Just think of this. If someone said to me, I'm going to have a good night's sleep, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be on my phone until the moment I actually shut my eyes. I'm going to look at the news that's going to trigger me. And I'm going to go to bed at maybe 2:00 in the morning. Now, all of those things are not going to be conducive. The room's going to be too hot. I'm going to be going to bed worried and all those sort of things. You're not going to sleep well. So these things will help getting off your devices. Try not to get yourself into a state over something you've seen in the news or a film that's upset you, or don't go to bed angry. Those sort of things definitely help. But once you get into the sleep cycles, and people with continual glucose monitors are really interested in this. We go through these 4 cycles more than once, so you get like 1 to 5 minutes of stage 1, and then you get something like 10 to 60 minutes of stage 2. Stage 3 is like what they call slow wave, and then you get the rapid eye movement, which everybody's heard about, the REM sleep, which is only about 10 to 60 minutes, but you can have that more than once. So when you go to bed late, you don't get it more than once because there's not enough physical time for it to run through those cycles. So you might get only one block of REM sleep, whereas if you go to bed, sorry to sound like your mum, but if you go to bed at a good time, you're going to get more chance of getting that REM sleep in at least twice, maybe 3 times. And the repair and recuperation is what sleep's all about. So probably not the scientific answer that Richard likes, but I do think we need to also look not just at nutrition, but all those things around us as well. We're going to get to James's question, and now I'm going to sit back and listen to the master as he answers what the Carnivore actually do for you compared to carbs in terms of athletic performance.
So yeah, James has helped me out a little bit in regards to some of my my social media posting. So I'm a little bit disappointed that he doesn't know this already, but so James is a fantastic athlete, young athlete, up and coming, an incredible friend as well. Awesome young man. But he's come from a background now of consuming lots of processed foods and drinking, sugary drinks. And he has changed his diet no end. When I met him a few years ago, I think last year, and he may correct me on this, but I think his 5K run was around 25 minutes, and now it's like sub 18. And these differences obviously have come from hard work, but also because he's been making these dietary changes. So the soft drinks have gone. He's now replaced that with electrolytes. So my electrolytes. So he drinks those instead. He's removed a lot of the processed foods, but he still consumes carbohydrate. So it's a progress. It's a slow progress. But in regards to the answer to your question, ketones are they're a far better fuel source, around 400%, and it's to do with something called the NAD plus to NADH ratio. When we consume carbohydrate along the electron transport chain requires or reduces NAD plus over time in order to convert this into NADH. And it costs the body 4 NAD plus molecules in order to convert 1 glucose molecule. Beta hydroxybutyrate costs the body 1. So this is where the conversion or increase in energy production is 400%. And this is why people live in a carnivore lifestyle. Stephen, for example, looks considerably younger than he actually is, which I don't mind. I don't think you'll mind me saying. You wouldn't think that I'm 62, but okay. But I am nearly 40. I look, I believe, at least considerably younger than I did in my 20s. I'm healthier, fitter, the healthiest and fittest I've ever been. So there's a few different points to this. Beta hydroxybutyrate, it's a far more superior energy source. It's more economical. It increases mechanical efficiency of the heart by as much as 75% and blood flow by as much as 35%, which not just for health, but for athletic performance is super important. But when we start reducing carbohydrates, the first port of call for an athlete seems to be, rice and pasta and pizzas. And again, these contain grains, lectins. Now, lectins bind to the enterocytes lining the gut. And when they do this, they reduce the surface area. So if we imagine the microvilli, which are like little fingers lining our gut, we have all of this surface area to absorb these nutrients. But when the lectins come in, they bind to these receptor sites, almost closing or reducing the surface area. So now the surface area has been massively reduced. So despite consuming nutritious food, the nutrients are being blocked. The phytic acid in the food also blocks the absorption of things like zinc, iron, and magnesium. Zinc is essential for the production of testosterone, which we need to build muscle. Women also need testosterone. All estrogen was once testosterone, so it's essential for hormone production. Magnesium is essential for production of energy within the muscle, and the list goes on and on. So these nutrients that we consume within highly nutrient-dense foods are being blocked by the foods that are high in lectins. Grains contain lectins, but a lot of other foods contain lectins and phytic acid. So there's things like peas and bell peppers and tomatoes. So going keto, you're going to see a massive improvement in health and well-being long-term, as well as athletic performance. But to reach the pinnacle, I think we need to be removing all lectins and phytic acid. And I think this is where a lot of the top-end athletes go wrong who are keto, because they will still consume X amount of carbohydrate, maybe from the wrong source. If you are going to put carbohydrate in, I recommend things like white rice, because white rice is lectin-free. But it's to do with the body's ability to absorb these nutrients. So we need to heal and repair, and we need to rebuild muscle, regardless of what your discipline is. And to do this, we need quality nutrients. We need to be able to absorb them. But when we're consuming these anti-nutrients, and all veg contains anti-nutrients, fiber is an anti-nutrient. We could go to town on the various different types, but I think that would probably take up an entire podcast, which I'm prepared to do. That'd be a fantastic one. But we need to remove these anti-nutrients. So going carnivore, we're consuming foods that are highly nutrient dense. A piece of meat, for example, red meat, that contains every vitamin and mineral we need, not just to survive, but thrive. Every vitamin and mineral. So when we look at veg and we're told that it contains vitamins and minerals, or it's a good source of vitamins and minerals, veg and fruit is a very poor source of vitamins and minerals, because it contains very little, contrary to popular belief. And this is one we've mentioned a few times. Vitamin A, for example, doesn't exist in plants. Beta carotene is found in plants, but it needs to be acted upon by enzymes, in particular BCMO, to convert it into the active form of retinol. B vitamins are incredibly low. Cobalamin, B12, does not exist in plants. Vitamin D does not exist in plants. K, which we're told is high quantities in kale, does not exist, because plants contain K1. We need K2. Vitamin C can be found in meat. It is found in meat. And the interesting thing there, when we reduce the volume of carbohydrates, because carbohydrates and vitamin C compete for absorption through the GLUT4 transporter, more vitamin C is absorbed. So by reducing carbohydrate, we gain more vitamin C. And the list goes on. Animal proteins contain creatine, carnitine, carnosine, taurine, choline, all of these things that we can't get from plants. So it's not just a case of consuming that meat and then thinking, well, I've eaten the meat, let's have some veg with it. Removing the veg increases the bioavailability, the body's ability to heal, repair, and grow. And again, it puts us into a deeper state of ketosis, where we're going to utilize this energy production from beta hydroxybutyrate. So going low carb, fantastic. Going keto, even better. Carnivore is a next step again. And there's different caveats to this, or different segments, I should say, where we can become deeper, we can travel deeper down that rabbit hole. But yeah, it's that's the long and the short of it. It's the body's ability to absorb nutrients, which we are heavily negated when we're consuming vegetables. And this isn't to say that you can never consume vegetables. After the run today, and James was there, we all went for a meal. Everyone else at the meal had a Sunday roast, and I had a steak which came with vegetables. But I avoided the vegetables. I just ate my steak and eggs, which was cooked in butter, by the way. The restaurant that we go to is incredibly good for us. They don't cook in seed oils. So yeah, it's as simple as that. It's about the body's ability to heal and repair. consuming highly nutrient-dense foods that is not being negated by the nasties, the anti-nutrients found in vegetables.
That's such a brilliant answer. And one of the things I always like to add, Richard, purely because otherwise I'm just standing there smiling going, that's great. If you're watching a video, I'm not talking about Richard now, but if you're watching a video and they say the body needs carbohydrates, it has to have carbohydrates to perform any function. You've got to listen to the wording because they're missing out the word dietary. All right. You don't need dietary carbohydrates. The body makes carbohydrates from non-carbohydrate substrates, and that is a much better way of getting your carbohydrates because it will be demand driven. It won't be you eating the excess carbohydrates. It will be your body producing carbohydrates. All right. So do be careful, because it's true. You have to have some carbohydrates. You just don't have to eat them. That's one thing. While we're on that subject, I do think the nuance of everything that we talk about can sometimes we can boil it down to some common sense. A couple of things, just completely off track here. But when people demonize saturated fat, the body makes fat, okay, and it always makes saturated fat. Do you think that the body would be so stupid as to not make the best type of fat? That's one thing. If you have somebody arguing with you about fiber and saying, well, you have to have fiber because the short chain fatty acids that are made in the fermentation process by that gut bacteria is very important. These are the same people that say you shouldn't eat saturated fat. Do you know what? The short chain fatty acids are saturated fat. So they're not consistent when they talk to you, because they're saying don't eat saturated fat, but eat this thing that we can't digest that makes saturated fat. All right. So, I like to have a different perspective. I think Richard likes that different perspective. One of the things I was doing while I was listening there is updating one of our tickers, and I will put that on in a second. But just a little tip. This was Matthew here. He uses light, which is unscented candles, instead of having the lights on, electric lights in the evening. He wears blue blocking glasses when watching TV after 9 p.m. They're very common things. We don't watch TV in our house. We have a DVD player to watch films every so often, but the screen work we do here, I mean, the only downside to the 24-hour live stream is the fact that I will be on a screen for 24 hours, and it's not something I am particularly looking forward to. But anyway, right, so let's get rid of that comment, and thank you, James, for that. And thank you, Matthew, for your little bit of background there. If you just look at the bottom of the screen, what you can see now is details of the guests, and it's just growing and growing and growing. And sorry to be boring, but the live stream is something that Richard and I put our heart and soul into. Obviously, that day for 24 hours, we were not going to be able to earn any money coaching, or he won't be working in the shop. We were just doing this. But it's a labor of love, and I just hope that you can pop in for at least an hour. I'd love you to submit some questions. So we've got some great questions for the guests that are coming up. It's really nice that they have given their time to do this. In the description on the YouTube channel, if you want to know how to be notified, go to the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, and just find the link there for the live stream on the 9th of July, and just click notify me, and that's fine. I'm going to add to my link tree the first thing will be get notified. So we're going to try and make it really easy for you. But we've got people there like Jen Unwin and David Unwin. They will be great to talk about diabetes. Keto Savage would be great to talk to about training and body composition, as will the composition consultant and Colt Milton. Serena Music is, big with the Carnivore Revolution, very good with practical advice. She's just a hardworking woman who had lots of difficulties with her health and turned it completely around. Obviously, Dr. Anthony Chafee is almost one of those doctors you can ask about anything, because he has a very broad knowledge, and obviously his specialism is evident. Dr. Sean Baker again, Dr. Kevin Stock, Judy Cho, they're all great. Dr. Avadia, of course, being a heart surgeon, very interesting to talk to. So that's my little plug for July the 9th. Is there anything you want to add on that, Richard?
Spread the word, as you say. I mean, you've put way more effort into this than I have. So I take my hat off to you for that. I know that you've put way more into this. So you say you and I mean, I've made some messages and sent some emails. We've been doing these live chats together, but you're the one that's putting it all together behind the scenes. So credit where it's due. But as you say, yeah, it's going to be an entire 2 days in theory of no work for us because of the 24-hour and for the guests coming on. So we want this to be big. Tell everybody within your community. Feel free to share on your Facebook and Instagram pages. Please tag us in. This gives us the ability to spread the word further and hopefully make something of it. And if the speakers coming on feel that it's been a success, then we can build off this and create other things. So this is what we're trying to do, isn't it? Is build a community. We're trying to spread the word. And what better way to do this than the speakers that we've got listed? Some incredible speakers, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I was trying to look at a way there that I can show people how to get the notifications, but I've just realised when we do a live stream, if I then go onto my own YouTube channel, it causes a little bit of a problem. So I can't do that. But yes, if you're watching this, you can see that it says Coach Stephen BSc Honours. That's my channel, and then if you click on that and go into the lives, you'll see the live stream on the 9th of July, and you can just click notify me. So hopefully we can do that. Thank you for the questions today to everybody. I think we've answered them all. And I like the comments as well. We've done an hour, so that's not enough preparation for a 24-hour. But next week, maybe we'll have some studies and some other bits, and I'll try and do the vision mixing a bit better as well. So it's a bit more slick. One of the things I'm going to try and do as well is every single guest, these things at the top of the screen, Richard Smith Keto Pro, I'm going to try and have things at the top of every screen for every guest with all of their, or not all of their, but, a link so we can see, and also links in description. So when these guests come on, and you're watching, and if you really let's just pick one at random, you look in there and you think, oh, Dr. Rachel Brown, I've watched, that's brilliant. You go to the description, her links will be live. You can click straight to talk to Rachel Brown, not talk to her personally right there and then, but you can contact them. So again, pick another one going across the screen. So if you think Colt is really good, you think that's great, you'll be able to click on his supersetyourlife.com website, and you'll be able to see all the stuff that Colt does. And we've tried to get very different people, and that isn't the definitive list going across the screen. Obviously, as more and more people are coming on board, I've got to try and update it all the time. The idea is for you to be able to ask any question to any guest, and I will try to then take the 24-hour live stream and chop it down into sort of usable hours and into podcasts. So it's a fair bit of work afterwards as well. But in the end, I think it's going to be a really good resource for everybody that wants to know about carnivore and keto. So don't miss that opportunity to ask a question, because if you're sitting on the fence and one thing is holding you back and you think, well, that's a really stupid question, I don't want to say that live because everyone's going to think I'm stupid. You see, this takes that out. Even though we're taking your email and name, we don't have to say, Richard in Wales has asked, is it carnivore to eat apples, right? We won't say that. So I'm deliberately doing a very silly question. I don't think we'll get questions like that. But we won't necessarily have to put your name down. So there's a bit you can ask a question, you can then put in brackets on the second bit, please keep this anonymous. And we can say to Dr. Chafee, can I eat 5 meals a day? Is that going to make my body fat go down? See, that might seem like a stupid question, but you see, there's different ways to answer that. 5 meals a day might actually be your gateway to start this. We really don't know, but obviously they've got to be small meals. Very unlikely it would be the advice, but we will discuss the difference between OMAD and 2MAD and 3MAD, 4MAD, 5MAD. So, don't be scared to ask a question which you, as you're even typing it, think, this is a really stupid question. If it worries you, stops you doing this, definitely ask. Sorry to labour that, but I can remember at school that, my teachers were always saying, there's no such thing as a stupid question. You put your hand up, you'd ask the question and everyone else would laugh. And you think, well, they obviously think it's stupid, but the teacher wouldn't. The teacher would answer it. All right. Well, with the live stream, you can be anonymous and still get your question answered. All right. And every question, I think, is valid, because if you don't know something, it's the best thing. I can tell you, I've had that real experience when I did my qualifications for my specialist practitioner status in obesity and diabetes. Because I'd not come from the medical world, I'd come from outside. I was asking questions that they all poo-pooed. And I tell you, they are now the best questions. All right. So I can remember thinking, why are they laughing? Why is this stupid? And I'll tell you the two questions. One was, I'd got to the point where I keep hearing this tutor saying, you dose your insulin in relation to carbohydrates. I genuinely put my hand up and just said, why don't we just reduce the carbohydrates? That was my question. And it was like, well, you got to have carbohydrates. That's ridiculous. It made me feel like this big. And that is a valid question. That definitely was the case. I'm not going to get into the second one, actually, but here we go. So that's it. Don't worry about your silly question. Oh yeah, fasting. I will, actually, because people will message me and say, well, what was the other question? I asked about fasting, and I was literally told by everybody that was the most ridiculous thing you could do. You have to eat. Everybody, even the tutor, was saying you have to eat, especially if you're diabetic. You've got to eat 4 times a day, because your blood glucose will just fall. And it was ridiculous. And we now know that the biggest successes we see are people reversing their diabetes is some form of intermittent fasting, even if it's just a restricted eating window. The form of fasting is helping them rapidly improve their situation. So there's two questions that I asked, and I can remember feeling stupid. So don't worry about feeling stupid. All right. Then there is no age limit to carnivore. Sorry, that's very random, but I'm just going to show you that this has come up. Is there an age limit to carnivore? Parents in their early 90s, but mobility really stopping them getting about. Well, I'm going to just do one little anecdote. I know it's an anecdote, but my oldest client, 89, and couldn't move, turned up, wanted a bit of rehab. That was for a bad back, biting onto a handkerchief and because the pain was so much, and the son was leading him in to go onto that table to have a little bit of rehab on his back. 89. Okay. And then obviously the conversation broadened out, and I bumped into him literally in a park. He was walking unaided without a stick at 90. And for his birthday, he'd actually gone and played 9 holes of golf. 9 holes of golf. So, and I was really proud because I was with my wife. I went, Jane, look, that's Doug. Because she doesn't see my rehab clients, So I mention them. Doug's, lovely guy, 89, now he's 90, playing golf. Couldn't believe it. So hopefully that one anecdote, and you only need one to prove something is it's not true. So if people are saying to you, you have to be 80 or less to start carnivore, well, that one anecdote proves that's rubbish. But anyway, what do you want to say, Richard?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that. I've worked with 2 clients previously who were over 100. One I remember being 106. In fact, I think it was a couple. They were both in the hundreds, which is absolutely incredible. But muscle is built by protein and fat. We get protein and fat from our animal proteins, so that's essential. People who do not consume enough protein will suffer with sarcopenia later in life, which is muscle wastage. And bone, as people age, they suffer with osteoporosis. Osteoporosis can be reversed. Bone is mineralized protein, is made from protein and minerals, particularly sodium is incredibly important. There's a direct correlation between calcium absorption in the bone and sodium. So we can't send calcium to the bone unless we increase sodium. But as a society, we're told to avoid sodium, which is why later in life we're suffering with this muscle wastage and these brittle bones. So we need lots of meat to build muscle, and we need lots of meat and salt and fat to help with bones. And this has been proven during a study that was carried out on a group of people over 65, where they split them into 3 groups. They fed these groups a low protein diet, moderate, and high. The low continued to degrade in bone density. The moderate stopped in its tracks, and the high, which to us isn't even that high, actually began to reverse osteoporosis. And this is in people over the age of 65, so not quite up to 90, but I think that's proof positive that we can make these changes. The body adapts incredibly quickly once we begin to give it the correct nutrients. And again, animal proteins devoid of these toxic chemicals, lectins from grains, and vegetable and seed oils, and lots of fat and salt as well is essential. My testosterone went up 30% in 3 months. Fantastic. Yeah, it initially mine did, and then it crashed, which is why Paul Saladino, I believe, one of the reasons that he came away. But again, I think this is a topic that we can go into more detail at a later date. But mine's improved to a higher level than it ever was prior to that again. But yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, I believe carnivore is suitable for anyone. I don't believe there's ever too late to eat meat. Eat your meat, eat your steak.
Yeah, and it really is that simple. And I think, muscle mass definitely has been correlated with longevity, hasn't it? Or the lack of muscle mass is a difficult thing when you're getting older. Actually, a very sad event yesterday. We went to a local area. I won't mention too much about it. And we were doing an open gardens tour. And one of the gardens that you were allowed to look at was in a care home. And I found it very demoralizing. Actually, a beautiful care home and very clean and beautiful facilities and a lovely garden. Obviously, they're showing off the garden. And, everybody was bright and breezy. We took our dog in, so which seemed to make all of the residents there very happy. But absolutely heartbreaking to see very malnourished looking people, very skinny people, and no sort of average people. They're either very overweight or very underweight, all with Zimmer frames, all with walking frames, or mobility scooters, and none of them looking particularly old. I mean, I didn't go in and think, wow, these are all people sort of in their 90s. No wonder they're frail. So I think it's one of those things that when that sort of thing hits you in the face like that. I mean, I came out of there pretty sad. I've got to be absolutely honest with you. Even though they were positive and lovely people, I just felt, their health could have been turned around 20 years previously if they hadn't had the food companies telling them what to do, and all the political lobbying going on and the food guidelines, which is, ironically, like a pyramid scheme. They give you a pyramid, and all it is about is money for people that are manufacturing these foods, distributing these foods, and growing these foods, trying to get you to have GMO crops. And I'm getting into a political rant and probably get us shut down, so I'm not going to get into that. But it is frustrating that simple things like bacon and eggs, a bit of butter, some beef, drinking water, and not having processed foods, little bit of exercise and mobility could have possibly changed the life of many, many people I saw yesterday. Absolutely heartbreaking. So if you can spread the word, that'd be really good. Richard can be found at instagram.com, keto_pro. It's on the screen. An absolutely brilliant guy. And I'm going to bounce back. I could not do this without him. I could not do the 24-hour live stream without him. So I think maybe I'm the guy that's doing all the nice images and getting some of the guests, but I would not do this on my own. I would have given up, I promise you, because it's hard work. It really is difficult. And a couple of other things. You might think I've been picking and choosing, or Richard's been picking and choosing who turns up. Some names are not on there, even though we've asked them. All right. I don't want to get too much into this, but there are people that we've asked and they don't respond, or they just don't want to do it. That's fine. They're busy. But I'm getting messages saying, you need to get this person, you need to get that person. Virtually every person that's been recommended to me, I have approached. So there's only 24 hours in the live stream. We can't have everybody on, but I promise you, it's not like picking my favorite people. It's picking the people that we think everyone wants to see. Actually, I mean, everybody is lovely, and I do think behind the scenes, the community is stunningly good. The people are, in the main, absolutely 100% genuine and great people, but you can't get everybody to say yes. You can't necessarily get to the person. You see, if they're very busy, you might not even be speaking to the person. And a real anecdote here, real story. Many years ago, when Planet Hollywood was opening here in England, in London, I was going out with a female who worked at London Weekend Television, and we were having Bruce Willis, or London Weekend Television was having Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, and Sylvester Stallone in this studio to be interviewed, and it was to coincide with the release of Planet Hollywood. And my girlfriend knew I was a big fan, actually, of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, and I could take it or leave Bruce Willis. Subsequently, I actually now like Bruce Willis ever such a lot in some of his movies. And she said, "Would you like the opportunity to meet these?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is true, by the way. Yeah, I'd love to meet these people. This would be great." And I was a very young person. I was a teenager, and I couldn't wait. And what had happened is subterfuge was very hot. There was a lot of people outside screaming, fans, and all this, and their dressing rooms, they were going to walk a certain way through to get to the studio, and this had been leaked. So any sort of crazed fans would be off the scent. And actually where they were going to go was through this back room, which was where there was some props, and there was a lovely guy in there, and he'd agreed to let me be in there with him. So what was going to happen was Bruce Willis was going to walk through into this little tiny room before going on stage. And I can remember looking that way and thinking, wow, there's Michael Aspel, there's the chair, that's where they're going to be. It's going to be amazing, right? This true story. All right. So Bruce Willis had a entourage. So did Sylvester Stallone, and so did Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Bruce Willis's entourage, one of the people there, came and was moaning about how many steps he had to walk to get to the studio, because he had to walk further than Stallone and he had to walk further than Schwarzenegger. Now, I now know that wasn't Bruce Willis. That was the hanger-on, all right? But in my teenage life, it was like, oh, that's a bit, I don't like it. And that's why I don't like him, sort of thing, because it sort of reaffirmed my bias. I really liked Stallone and I liked Schwarzenegger. So anyway, just to tell you what actually happened, when they got Schwarzenegger on, he blanked everybody. Whether that was his tactic, he didn't want to do small talk, whether he was focused, he just walked through and then he stood away from absolutely everybody, waiting to be, announced and to go on to the applause that you see on these chat shows. That was fine. I can remember looking that way and seeing him in the gap between these curtains, just standing there for a couple of minutes, just stock still, nothing. All right. Schwarzenegger had gone through. So then Stallone came through with this Planet Hollywood cap, beautiful leather sort of jacket, type of thing, shiny baseball jacket. And the guy I was with said, "Oh, I love your cap. My nephew would love that cap." And he literally just took it off and gave it to this guy, which was brilliant. I mean, obviously, there's a plentiful supply, but it was just really nice. And he had a little chat. Stallone had a little chat with us. Very, very nice. I'm not knocking anyone, by the way. I'm just giving you how they're all different. How you see them and how they come across are all different, and you don't know the facts. So maybe Schwarzenegger needs to center himself. I don't know. Stallone seemed very casual and relaxed about it, and Bruce Willis just buzzed through. Now that could be because his entourage, there's people in his entourage, not him, who have got a problem. And they're small-minded. A little bit of power has gone to the head. Whatever happened, this is all many years ago. I don't think I'm actually giving anything away. But so when I started doing this, there were a lot of influencers out there with huge followings, and you just message them, and they might not actually deal with their messages, which is interesting. It might not actually be them. It might be somebody, a middle person, doesn't want to do it. So please stop asking me to get certain people on, because I promise you I'm trying. I really am. And if they're not coming on, doesn't mean they're nasty. Doesn't mean anything other than they haven't got time, or everyone is giving their time up for nothing. So we're trying our best to get the people that we can get, and the people we got really, really happy with, fantastic influencers, lots and lots of knowledge. So I think it's going to be a brilliant 24-hour live stream. I promise you, every single name I've had suggested, I am trying to get, but you just can't do it.
Yeah, I agree. There's two in particular that I've reached out to and came back to me immediately and said yes, and then due to other work commitments they're unable to make it, and they would have been a part of this, and that's somebody I consider a friend, Ben Azadi in the States. He was gutted that he couldn't make it, and Dr. Paul Mason, who kindly phoned me, we had a chat, and he's up to his neck working on some papers. So perfectly legitimate reasons. Both of them were super keen, but unable to make it. But yeah, we've reached out to literally everyone, haven't we? And yeah, everyone that can make it is on board.
He's doing it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's it. So, but fine. Thank you for all the suggestions. It's really great, and I think we've done well. I think we've got the people that've been brilliant who've stepped up. So, looking at that list across the bottom of the screen, it's like a dream team, and I mean, Dr. Paul Mason, great. If we could have got him, he would have been brilliant, wouldn't he? But if he hasn't got, if he's busy, he's busy. This is life. But maybe
one of the nicest people I ever spoke with, true gentleman. And I think he'll, we'll do something with him in the future. I don't think that future will be too far away, but unfortunately he can't make the live, so we'll get him on another episode, no doubt.
Yeah, But thank you everyone for the suggestions of who we should get. That was great. Richard, can you hang around once I end the broadcast?
For sure.
Great stuff. Anyway, go on.
Can I just say quickly, thanks to everyone for the questions, and Andrew in there has said thanks guys from Denver. James, we've got Matthew with loads of questions, Valerie and Cami. The list goes on and on. Thank you all so much for being part of this and the questions, some fantastic questions. Fingers crossed you keep them coming next week and the week after that. So thanks from me.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
No worries. Thank you all.